Well, sorry about that. Hold on. Alrighty, well, I'm getting that back up again. Welcome into the overnight edition of From Day One. Art Bell, as you can hear, is finally back, ready to take his space in the overnight. Tonight, Art Bell's guest is Michael Rigg, head of the Bigfoot Fiddlesticks. I'm having trouble just getting this to broadcast for crying out loud. Bigfoot Discovery Museum. So, from the 25 time zones here and around the world, for both Art Bell and, of course, here from Day One, here we go with Midnight in the Desert. Art Bell, it is your stage, please.
From the high desert in the great American Southwest, I bid you all good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be in the world's plentiful time zones. Welcome to Midnight in the Desert. I'm Art Bell. Well, this should be an interesting show. I don't know how much you know about Bigfoot, but we're about to teach you a lot more. In a moment, rules of the show. No bad language, and only one call per show. That's fairly standard stuff. Thank yous for the show, also pretty standard, actually. Telos, great sound. Joe Talbot, right here in Pahrump, and Telos, amazing stuff. Keith Rowland, my webmaster, my producer Heather Wade, Bellgap website, people love Art Bell, MID. That's midnightindesert.com, StreamGuys, LB.net, Peter Everhard up in Anchorage, who does the advertising. If you're interested in advertising, that's the guy to get hold of. And advertising on here is very productive because we don't have much of it. So, because we don't have much, what you do have obviously gets heard. All right, so last night's show, I got one response of thousands that I really love, this particular one. I mean, some loved it, some hated it. It really went the whole gauntlet. This one I enjoyed, though, Art. I enjoyed the debate last night. I do have a suggestion for the Flat Earth expedition to the sun. You know, that expedition, she says, where he says they prove irrefutably the sun is 3,000 miles above the flat Earth.
Yeah, go for it.
He says they should go at night so no one gets hurt. Oh, boy. All right, from the Anomalist, I watch them daily.com. The complete Patterson-Gimlin film footage. Now, we've got some hot stuff up there tonight, reference Bigfoot. And Anomalous says, be sure not to miss it, because this is an absolute must-see, as Bigfoot evidence explains. Very few people have ever watched the entire film, the Patterson film, ever before. Already some people are seeing some inconsistencies or anomalies, most notably the presence of another person at 53 seconds into the footage to the far left. The film jumps a bit, and the figure changes position, which rules out it being a tree stump, obviously. Patterson and Gimlin have always insisted they were alone on the trip, so if that is a third person, who is it? That's kind of an obvious duh, I would say. We definitely have the right man to be talking about this with tonight. His name is Michael Rugg. That's R-U-G-G. He is co-founder of the Bigfoot Discovery Project, curator of the Bigfoot Discovery Museum, located in the Santa Cruz Mountains of California. The purpose of this museum is to educate the public at large about the probability of Bigfoot and the current best guesses as to its inhabitants and its place in the natural world. He's been collecting information and artifacts tracks while studying known bipedal primates since the early 1950s. He's been at this a while. When the first photos of unknown tracks on Mount Everest appeared in Western newspapers, since 2003, he's dedicated his full-time attention to the mystery primate phenomenon via the Bigfoot Discovery Museum that he runs. And I think we've got him on the line with us on the phone. Hello there, Mike.
Hey, how you doing, Art?
Really well, Mike, and really glad to have you on the program.
Oh, well, I am honored to be on your program.
Thank you.
I listened to you years ago, and always loved your work.
Thank you. So, Bigfoot, I guess I would like to ask you, because I've never met you, I don't think we've ever talked, have we?
Nope.
No, nope, haven't. All right, Mike, how did you come to get started in Bigfoot research? I mean, there has to be a precipitating event of some kind, like seeing this creature or something.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, the beginning of that is really hard to nail down, but I think it probably has to do with having a sighting as a child.
Oh.
I found that throughout my childhood, I had a particular fascination with apes of all kinds. I read every Tarzan novel cover to cover. I used to want to go to the zoo all the time and hang out with the chimps and the gorillas and so on and so forth. And then, not too many years ago, I was reading an excerpt in, I think, one of John Green's books, and a lady was describing a sighting she had up in Northern California, and it made me have this flashback memory. And the memory that flashed into my head was that I actually saw a Bigfoot. And the way the story goes is it was in probably 1950, and I was with my parents, my mom and my dad. My dad was a fisherman, my mom was a driftwood collector.
Mike, may I ask your age?
69.
69. Okay, I got a year on you, buddy.
All right.
Kid.
Yeah.
So in 1950, you were still pretty young.
Yeah, I was between 4 and 5 years old.
Right. Okay.
And so the sighting happened because I strayed away from the camping. My parents and I were camped on a beach on the Eel River up in Northern California. Now, we were there because my dad once had a sawmill up in that area, and so he knew the best fishing holes and swimming holes. And even though our family had moved to the East Bay, down in the Bay Area, we would still go up to the Eel River to fish and hunt driftwood. Mm-hmm. So it was one of those trips, and they were making breakfast on the camp stove, and I went wandering off by myself.
Like an idiot.
I should have announced to them, of course, I was leaving, but I didn't. And I was following a trail that kind of hugged the river edge, but the road was blocked by brush and so forth. There was brush on both sides of the path. I pushed my way through the brush, stepped out into an open sandbar, and then I just, kind of was scanning the horizon, looking around to see what I could see. And as I turned back towards the forest, I realized that somebody else had stepped off the path, probably 10 yards ahead of me, and was standing there looking at me. And this fellow was extremely tall. I remember noting that, thinking if you stacked my mom and dad up, they would not measure up to this man. And he was covered in long reddish-brown hair. Mm. And I had a very good look at him. It was about 5:36 in the morning. The sun was up. There was no brush between us. There he was. And as I was making eye contact for a couple of seconds, I hear my mother screaming, "Mikey, where are you?" So, being a good son, I dropped everything and I ran back to the campsite, notified my mom that I was all right, and then said, "Why don't you guys come and see the big hairy man?"
Come see the big hairy,
Does your mom recall this?
I asked her. She came to live with me about the same time that I started the Bigfoot Museum. Okay. She was 96 at that point. Oh. And was, in need of help. So I took care of her until she died at 102. And
not bad.
When she first moved in, she was still pretty lucid. I asked her, when was the last time we went up to Humboldt, and went fishing and so forth? And she said, oh, well, that would have been prior to 1952. Mm-hmm. Now, when I had my flashback, I was kind of reticent to admit it to anybody. I kept it to myself because I had my own doubts. And I have found now, interviewing hundreds and hundreds of Bigfoot witnesses, it's quite common for people to doubt themselves because, the nature of this phenomenon. So I didn't really mention it. And so I asked my mother, do you recall, me telling you of seeing a hairy man on the beach up there? And she said, no, I don't remember that. But what she did was she established that the timing would have been around 1950, 51. And so it makes sense that I would have forgotten such a thing. Because my original thought was, I must have been 10 years old after my father's heart attack when I saw that thing. And that didn't make sense. How could I have forgotten such a thing? When I was 10 years old, that would be 1956. By then, people were talking about the abominable snowman, so it wouldn't have been something that I had no reference for. But when I saw this thing, I didn't have a name for it. I didn't have any way of knowing what it was, because it wasn't something within my sphere. And it wasn't until a couple of years later when the announcement of the abominable snowman footprints went around the world and started the whole mystery primate thing.
All right. So you've been studying Bigfoot then almost, I guess, all your adult life?
Well, I've been studying it all my adult life for sure, and most of my childhood as well. Because 52 is when that the picture was taken by Eric Shipton on Mount Everest of the footprints.
Right.
And those hit the news in late 51, early 52. Life magazine, of course, did a big article about it. It was all the news, the abominable snowman. And I didn't, when I heard about that, I didn't make a connection with my memory. Oh, because I forgot to mention when I asked my parents to come and see the Bigfoot that I had observed.
Yes.
They went with me, and when we got there, of course, it wasn't there. And so they proceeded to tell me, "Don't worry, don't be afraid. Forget about it. It was probably just a tramp." And I said, "What's a tramp?" And they said, "Well, a homeless person. They probably don't have great hygiene. They don't shave every day. They're out in the woods. Yeah, you probably saw a homeless person, a tramp." So I learned that a tramp is a 10-foot tall hairy man.
All right. Can you establish credentials other than your own experience for your study of Bigfoot?
To be a, you hear the term all the time, self-proclaimed expert.
You do.
And you do hear that thrown around a lot, especially by skeptics. And my question is, how does one become an expert in anything? They do so by studying it, and they study it in lots of different ways. And so it started with me by getting a scrapbook and collecting every article on the abominable snowman I could find, newspapers, magazines, etc.
Well, there's a Bigfoot Northwest University. You could have credentialed there, right?
That would have been good if I had known about that. Yeah. So, and then I started, of course, purchasing any Bigfoot toy or article that came out. And then, in 1961, there was a book written by Ivan Sanderson called Abominable Snowman, Legend Come to Life. And that was right at the time that I was starting high school. So during my scholarly years in both high school and college, I attempted to make this a major study. Every chance I got to bring it up and to make it a part of the curriculum that I was undergoing, I would do so. But I got a lot of flack back from the professors.
Oh, I bet you have. In your view, is the abominable snowman and Bigfoot the same thing?
I don't believe so.
You don't think so? All right. Hold that thought. Okay. We have to take a break, and I better take it. Not the same thing. Why couldn't it be the same thing? Same fur, same height, same look. One's cold, one's not. Seems to me it could be the same thing. When we get back, we'll ask about that. I'm Art Bell, and this is Midnight in Desert. Take a walk on the wild side of midnight. From the kingdom of Nye, this This is Midnight in the Desert with Art Bell. Please call the show at 1-952-225-5278. That's 1-952-CALL-ART. My guest is Mike Rugg, co-founder of the Bigfoot Discovery Project, curator of the Bigfoot Museum, actually, in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and that's probably where Bigfoot would be. The question was, the abominable snowman and Bigfoot, they do seem, on the face of them, sorry about that, like the same creatures. One in a cold place, one, I don't know, maybe in the Santa Cruz Mountains.
Mm-hmm. Well, they certainly are both mystery primates, animals that are seen by indigenous peoples and described and denied by science. So they have that in common. Also, the descriptions are similar. And one of the misconceptions, of course, about the abominable snowman is that they're white. They're always depicted looking like a white ape. And most of the individuals who have seen them and described them, the great majority of them have described them as black or brown or reddish, similar colors to the Bigfoot, to other apes.
I mean, if a Bigfoot was snowed on and in the ice, he'd probably be fairly white.
Yeah, and then of course there are some individuals that are born white, have pink eyes and so forth. I suppose be one of those. But I think that what the Yeti or the abominable snowman is an ape that lives in high altitude mountains below the snow line. Most apes and other primates do not live in the snow.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one monkey I know that does, and the rest pretty much stay out of the snow. And so I think it's an ape that has developed the ability to cross mountain passes through the snow by walking upright. And I picture a Yeti as putting his hands up as soon as he gets in the snow, walking upright until he's to the next valley on the other side of the ridge, and then as soon as he enters the forest again, he gets back down on all fours. And the reason for that is because the footprints. The archetypal footprint of the abominable snowman has a big toe that sticks off to the side of the foot, accompanied by another semi-large toe, and then three normal-looking toes, kind of, and three side by side. Whereas Sasquatch tracks look more like giant flat-footed human tracks.
All right. How about this? You said that at times he's on 2 feet and then back on all fours. Yes.
That's what I believe. Yes.
Okay. So a lot of people believe that man slowly came up in our evolution from, frankly, at one point all fours, and then we stood up straight and walked. Does that make Bigfoot or the abominable snowman? Does that make them? What's the right word? Some sort of ancestral relationship to us, maybe one that, I don't know, stopped or slowed down and while we kept going. I don't know.
Well, there's a whole bunch of different possibilities. Think about this Bigfoot thing and the Yeti thing. It is indeed a global phenomenon. People have been reporting these things from all over the world ever since the beginning of oral history. It's something that's always been there. And I think it's because in the history of the evolution of humans, we have had ancestors that coexisted alongside us. In other words, when we evolved from one animal into a new one through a mutation,
yes,
the original progenitor animal doesn't just suddenly disappear. They continue to exist, and now there's a new one coexisting. Now, if those two, as they evolve and develop, if the new one somehow goes into competition with the original progenitor species, then they may supplant them.
Yes.
Through what's called the survival of the fittest.
Yes. And while we're here, is Bigfoot an endangered species?
Well, I don't believe so. But I think that with the current condition and with as many people now involved in Bigfoot hunting, shall we call it, I think that they may become endangered. As more people are willing to believe that they exist, I think there are going to be more people who want to go out and shoot one.
There'll be a dentist somewhere.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure. So in fact, I'm sure there are people like that. And you know, we talked in recent days about people putting on Bigfoot costumes, or we had some other creatures that we depicted on the website, those kind of costumes. And frankly, putting on a costume like that and walking around, say in your Santa Cruz mountains there, I know those mountains, it seems to me that would be really, really dangerous.
Yes, I would say so. You know, 9 out of 10 people, normal people, wouldn't think, wouldn't even cross their mind to take a shot at one of those. But there are people who, that's exactly what they want to do. They want to shoot first and ask questions later. And there are people who claim to have done so.
Okay, let us, I know. I interviewed one of them. You remember that interview?
I remember Bugs.
Bugs, yes, he shot 2. I had the map. It got lost in a move. And forever lost, I'm sorry to say. Bugs, of course, is welcome to get hold of me and
so
refresh our memory on all of this.
That never was resolved?
He was afraid. He was afraid, Mike, that he murdered a couple of people.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, that's the common reason why people don't report their Bigfoot kills.
That's right.
They usually do it thinking it's a bear.
Well, yeah, but that if you actually killed a Bigfoot, you would probably, if you were like the dentist, you'd be screaming to the media. You'd be saying, "Look what I did." You'd be standing over it like a trophy, and then allowing the scientists in. You'd make the most of your 15 minutes or more of fame. There's no doubt about it. So I'm thinking nobody has done it yet, except maybe the fellow I interviewed, Bugs. Bugs, if you're out there, get hold of me, buddy.
Well, there's a man out there right now who claims he killed 2 of them just recently.
Oh, and did not report it because?
Because he was afraid of prosecution because it looked too much like a human.
Well, there you are. So once they walk up to their kills...
Yeah. I heard another story from a local man who had his father had a friend who was a mountain man. His name was Elmer Briner. And he hunted grizzly bear for a living. And he, around 1900, was at the mouth of the Pitt River where it met the Sacramento. That's before Lake Shasta was put there.
Right.
And he took aim and shot a grizzly bear in the back of the head. And as he watched it fall down, he had a good kill. He started working his way down the canyon wall to harvest this bear. He had an Indian companion with him named Cannonball, who was on the other side of the river. He went across in a little cable contraption and got to the side. And the 2 of them got to this kill about the same time. And the man who told me the story was a former Navy SEAL. He lives here locally in the valley. And he said that he couldn't help but kind of choke up and get a little tear in his eye when he was telling me this, because Elmer Briner cried like a baby, because he said that when they rolled that grizzly over, it had a human face and human hands and feet. And he realized he'd killed a wild man.
Oh, my God.
And not a grizzly. And he did not feel good about that.
All right. That begs an obvious question then. Are there other wild men out there that might run into the same problem for the same reason? I mean, virtually feral humans, I guess.
Well, I think there are feral humans out there. I think that's part of the problem. You see, the phenomena, as I mentioned earlier, being a global thing that's been going on for years, forever, so to speak, it's not going to be defined by any one particular species of animal, I don't think. I think that there are, because what we're dealing with here are sighting reports. The Bigfoot phenomena is largely anecdotal. We have the Patterson film, we have some footprints and things like that, but mostly what we have are eyewitness testimony. And that you can take and use as a database, and that tells us a lot of stuff about these animals.
All right. May I ask you a really personal question?
Mm-hmm.
If you were somewhere outside your museum, had a gun in your hand, a good high-powered rifle, and Bigfoot was standing, 50 yards away from you, would you raise your rifle and fire, or would you, I don't know, cradle your rifle and make little cooing sounds or something, trying to get Bigfoot to come your way? Now, don't answer that yet. That's why we have grace. People will hang around to find out what the answer is. Even I have no idea what he's going to say. This is a classic question. Would you shoot or would you hold your fire? Midnight in the desert. Yeah. Well, I'm going to set this up even better because if you think about Mike Rugg, the curator, Discovery Museum up in the mountains there in Santa Cruz, and you think about his position, then this question gets a lot harder. If you think about Mike Rugg, again, who owns a museum, and the question I'm posing, and Mike, you can picture him now, he just maybe went out for a smoke, or maybe he's quit, I don't know, but he's outside the museum when it's closed and late. He's got a 30-06 with him, at least. And oh my God, it couldn't be 50 yards away. Got to be like 10 feet tall, covered in brown fur. Meanest looking thing you ever saw. Now, he can either raise that 06, or he can cradle it and try to talk to Bigfoot and communicate with it like a civilized person. But then on the other hand, you got to think, well, Mike owns the biggest museum of its sort probably in the world. And if he had a stuffed Bigfoot in the museum, they'd be coming from miles round. Actually, there'd be Japanese tourists traipsing through your museum at whatever the charge is to traipse currently. So, there you got him in your sights, Mike. What would you do? Truth be told.
Well, I would have to go along with what Gimlin did. And Gimlin held the rifle and watched as Patterson did the filming. He told me if that thing had gone after Roger, I could have taken an eye out with one shot. I was that good. And that's what I would have done. But it didn't go after Roger, so we agreed not to shoot unless we were in danger. And that's the way I would handle it. And I would, when we go out and hunt Bigfoot, go out in the woods and try and...
And you do that, right?
We do, yes. I do with several volunteer helpers.
Uh-huh.
And we did that for a number of years, 3 or 4 nights a week. And we had experiences. I found out that you can actually put yourself in a position to have a Bigfoot experience. It's not as difficult as I had imagined.
Well, wait a minute now. If you're going to say that, then I'm going to begin to ask you about its paranormal characteristics.
Yeah, well, I have certainly talked to a number of individuals who have described characteristics that would be considered paranormal. That certainly is one type of Bigfoot. There's another type of Bigfoot, that's the mythical Bigfoot.
Yes.
That's the one that has no parents and is thousands of years old.
Okay.
There's only one of, people think there's only one Bigfoot, the mythical Bigfoot. The mythical Bigfoot also includes, of course, hoaxes. But there's the biological Bigfoot as well. Now, the big question, is the biological Bigfoot completely 100% biological, or does it sometimes fade over into the paranormal realm? Some witnesses would tell you so, and some of my peers would immediately shun those witnesses, would tell them to be quiet and go away, that they don't want to hear about it. I don't do that. We try to take in every bit of data that comes our way, because anecdotes are anecdotes.
Sure.
And if you start picking and choosing which ones you want to listen to and which ones you don't, then I don't think you're doing science.
Right.
And we're trying to do the right thing and do it the right way and come up with some truths. So paranormal is considered as well as everything else. But I'll have to say that right now I'm concentrating on the biological Bigfoot, and I will continue to do so until I feel that there's something haywire.
Yeah, before we get too far into the show, you've got some photographs for us that you put up on, or is linked to artbell.com. So if they go to artbell.com right now, you can see what I guess Mike refers to as, or thinks of as, a Bigfoot tooth. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, we like to think that this could very well be a Bigfoot tooth.
I'm going there now.
If it's not a Bigfoot tooth, then it's a giant human tooth.
Well, oh God, I feel so sorry for that human if that's what it is.
Yeah, well, I showed it to 7 dentists, and all 7 of them said, this looks like a human upper molar, but it's way too big. So what I have there is a picture of a human molar next to a human mandible. Now, that mandible is a cast made from an actual human skull that I got from a museum supply house. The molar tooth, however, and then next to it is the tooth that was discovered in the mountains here, just 3 miles from the museum. And next to it, I have the Meganthropus jaw, which is a reconstruction done by Grover Krantz of Meganthropus. Meganthropus, the big man, was discovered on the island of Java. It's known from just a few bones. 2 of them you can see there, the dark teeth are the actual fossil.
All right, let me only stop long enough, please, so everybody can catch up with this. When you go to artbell.com, at the very top, when you get on the page, folks, you'll see a picture of Mike, who kind of looks like, you play Santa, at Christmas?
I was offered a job as a professional Santa.
There you have it. He kind of looks like Santa. Click on that, and then you'll get to the pictures I'm talking about. It's all at artbell.com. Okay, so first picture up, Bigfoot tooth images. Now, got a part of a tooth there next to a penny.
Yeah.
That
is the putative Bigfoot tooth.
That can't be a human tooth. There's no way. No way.
Right, it's way too big. But it certainly could be a Bigfoot tooth because it happens to be in an area where we have contemporary sighting reports.
Mike, when I look at that, I've got to ask a question. When I look at that, it's like I almost see what almost looks like, I don't know, guts of a tooth. I mean, more than just enamel. It almost looks like there's a biological material in there.
Well, yeah, that's because the crown is worn off that tooth. You're seeing what is a huge cavity.
Exactly, but my point here is that something with that much biological whatever that gook is would have some sort of DNA in it, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, that would be expected.
Have you had that DNA?
Well, it's a very long story, but I'll just tell you that I have tried. Part of my tooth is now still in a lab in Texas with Melba Ketchum.
Okay.
Part of my tooth is in Oxford, England with Brian Sykes.
Yeah, they like to cut these samples up like crazy.
Yeah, and the last third of the tooth was once in a little jar here in the museum, but last week it turned up missing.
Oh, no.
I'm afraid somebody took it.
Oh, no. You mean like somebody just... Oh, that's horrible. You mean somebody was coming through the museum, lifted what was left of your tooth?
Yes.
Thank God you've got the photograph.
We have the photographs, and there are parts of the tooth, like I said, still in existence. And 2 different DNA labs, both of which supposedly we're going to test them.
Okay.
When Brian Sykes did his study, he opted to use only hairs, even though they asked for other things.
Okay, let's go up now to the mandibles up above.
Mm-hmm.
Those are awfully big. I mean, what do the scientists say about these?
Well, that mandible, like I said, comes from an animal that's been labeled Meganthropus by scientists. Other scientists will say, well, that's an unnecessary name. That's actually a Homo erectus, but it happens to be an especially large one.
Well, could they, from the size of the mandible, project the size of the creature?
Well, yes, they have done that, and if I didn't put the picture up, but there is a cranium that's been reconstructed that goes with it. The whole skull has been reconstructed by Grover Krantz, and they had a complete occipital bone, so that means they had a very good indication of the cranium size. The cranium is nearly as big as a human cranium. It has the beginnings of a sagittal crest, a little bit of a bump down the center of the forehead, and that bony ridge around the eyes that you see Patterson creature.
Right.
That you'll find on the Meganthropus skull, and you'll find this gigantic, twice the normal size jaw.
To me, it looks like it belongs to that guy in the 007 movie with the teeth. Remember him?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Or something much bigger even. So it's gigantic, absolutely gigantic. I hope people are following along with us here. It's at artbell.com. And then there are other comparisons to teeth, a little down lower, also up against pennies to give you a concept of size. Mm-hmm. That one on the bottom, what am I looking at?
Well, that's all one tooth you're seeing from the different angles. And so what you're seeing there is the fact that the crown has worn off the top. You can see that in the side view that shows the tooth interior. And you can see the dental material down both sides. Crown is worn off. And then you look down at the roots and you see those are broken off. And then if you look at that top view, you can see that also almost a half the tooth is missing. So that tooth, the way it is right now, when you look at it compared to the human tooth up there in that other photo with the mandibles, it looks pretty big. But if you were to restore that to its full size, it would be then obviously twice the size of that human tooth.
Yes, sir. All right, so we're talking about an obviously really large, probably very scary creature here. And, I've got to go back to this question just one last time. I mean, really, Mike, if you had the chance to have a stuffed, real McCoy, full, no question about it, Bigfoot in your museum, you could really turn that down in the name of...
Well, in the name of humanity. I mean, I think that eventually, unless these things turn out to be paranormal, we're going to eventually have a Bureau of Bigfoot Affairs. We're going to have to set up our agencies. There'll be some forests and things that will be set aside for them. And they'll have their rights to the pursuit of happiness like the rest of us. Because if they are 99.9 human...
A Bureau of Bigfoot Affairs. More government, Mike. More government.
Oh, yes, but with people like myself running it.
Oh, you really think so? I'll bet that's what the Apaches thought, too. We'll be running things.
That's my fantasy, anyway.
Yes, okay. Well, all right, so on to a million other questions. You say they're all around the world. Bigfoot is, in one form or another, can be seen in almost all parts of the world, yes?
Mm-hmm, yes. What's really interesting is the most recent find, which is on the island of Flores in Indonesia.
Wow.
The people there, the Nage people. I've been telling scientists for quite some time about the little hairy people that live in the forest. They're described as being, 3 feet in height, completely grown, running around on 2 legs, and having no apparent signs of culture of any kind. Mm-hmm. And they call them the Abugogo. So this is another typical Bigfoot myth, because the Bigfoot around the world come in different sizes. Not only are they described as being particularly large and robust, but there are also gracile varieties, little ones, littlefoots. And those are spotted in Africa, Central America, North America, and most particularly on islands. And so here's an island, and some scientists went there from Australia, and of course they ignored the tales of the little wild men in the forest. They didn't go looking for living beings, but they did find a big cave that interested them, so they dug down in this cave, and lo and behold, here's 13 little skeletons of 3-foot-tall diminutive people. And these people have skulls that look like miniature Homo erectus people. And some of the bones are 90,000 years old, some of the bones are only 13,000 or 12,000.
Do Bigfoot creatures die?
Do they die?
Do they die?
Of course they die. If they are biological, they die.
Where are the bones?
Well, that's another interesting question. That's the one that people always bring up. Mm-hmm. And I have a pretty simple explanation for it. The bones are in the fossil record, and they are in universities and other collections around the world, and they are considered to be members of our family tree. They are described in various ways as Australopithecus, Homo erectus, Homo habilis, Homo ergaster, Homo adultu, Homo heidelbergensis, Homo neanderthalensis. In other words, if one of those wild men from our past, you know, Lucy, the little one from Africa that was 4 million years old, walking on two legs.
Yes, yes.
If you saw one of those in the forest today, you would probably report a Bigfoot event. So what I'm saying is,
at my age, I might just, keel over. But yes.
So in other words, there's plenty of bones in the fossil record indicating the existence of large bipedal primates. And other than the fact that a lot of these giant skeletons have been hidden away on purpose, we would have more examples of giants.
Why would somebody hide them away on purpose? Unless you felt you had, as a hunter, killed a human by mistake, or something that would be regarded as perhaps human. Nobody wants to face murder charges, so, yeah, sure, then you hide them. Otherwise, if you really think you got a Bigfoot, you start screaming and yelling and maybe even open a museum in competition with Mike.
Yeah, well, we have plenty of effigies of Bigfoot here at our museum. We have one carved of redwood, a couple.
Yeah, but they're effigies.
We also have some hollow ones made of papier-mâché and wax.
Yeah.
They're 9 feet tall.
Well, impressive, but again...
They give you a good idea of how Bigfoot
they do.
Looks and how it stands next to you.
Right.
But a real one would be good, so that's our next plan.
Oh.
It's called habituation.
Well, break that down for the rest of us. Habituation.
You habitually create a scenario in which you're inviting a Bigfoot to come in to join you.
Okay.
You have a campsite dedicated to that, and you provide meats and sweets for the Bigfoot.
Meats and sweets. How do you... Meats and sweets, other than that, what is it you do? I mean, there's lots of meats and sweets at most, campgrounds. People go out camping. They generally are cooking something that must smell pretty good to a Bigfoot, at a mile away, 2 miles away.
Sure, yeah. Well, that's why they come and visit people's camps in the middle of the night. They're looking for some of those sweets and meats. Otherwise, they stay away. I think the Bigfoot figured out about 300 years ago here in North America that the only way they were going to survive as a species would be by hiding.
Well, we were about to get to that. So, we don't see many Bigfoot. There is an occasional report, even an occasional photograph. But otherwise, we don't see them, which means they must be smart, at least smart enough to hide.
Yeah.
Or we'd see them, right?
When we opened the museum here in Santa Cruz 10 years ago, I didn't think of this as a Bigfoot area. I knew that the Bigfoot would have been here in the past because it's a beautiful place to be. And I was quite sure there had been Bigfoot here, and I'd heard a couple of random stories. But I figured that they would be long gone from Santa Cruz because once the university came in, the college was built and so on, we had a lot more people coming and staying, and Silicon Valley put together. We became a bedroom community for Silicon Valley. There's tourists, there's lumberjacks and all this stuff.
Right.
Bigfoot would have exited this place a long time ago. And then, as soon as the word hit the street that the Bigfoot Museum was here, the locals started coming in and telling me they're seeing them in their backyards right now.
Isn't that interesting? You think just the power of suggestion, or is it possible that the thing you talked about earlier, the sort of invitation, is what produces the experience?
Well, there's a lot of ways of looking at this. Yes, some would say that, it's mass hysteria caused by the existence of your museum. But I would also say, well, the museum is immediately recognized as a safe harbor for people who have had experiences like this who normally get ridiculed by everyone they try to share that with. And almost to the person, people who come in this museum and tell me their Bigfoot events and their encounter, they preface it by saying, I don't talk about this much because when I do, I get ridiculed.
I totally get it, Mike. Of course they do. Of course they get ridiculed. And that keeps people, Mike, from not just not talking about Bigfoot, but not talking about all kinds of paranormal experiences that they have. They're afraid they're going to, whether it's a business problem, or they're worried about people coming to gently put on a little restraining white thing and take them away. One way or the other, they don't talk about it. All right, Mike, hold tight. We'll be right back. Mike Rugg is my guest, co-founder of Bigfoot Discovery Project, curator of the Bigfoot Museum in the Santa Cruz Mountains, where I hear tell that Bigfoot's been seen from the high desert and the great American Southwest. This is Midnight in the Desert, rocking the night away.
And with that, we will call it a night on that. Come on back for part 2 of the midnight trip through the Bigfoot Museum on our next episode. And with that, as the dawn of a new day in Dominion, that'll bring us to a close for this Sunday edition of From Day One. As always, please make sure you do like, share, and subscribe. Help us get to that goal of 50,000 views, 1,000 subscribers. So back to you over next Thursday. We'll let go with those red boxes so we can give them out to you as gifts. And Google will put us on the algorithms. Until next time, like, share, and subscribe. Be kind to one another and definitely release the Krakens as we march along this overnight and every overnight here from Day One. Have a great night's sleep. Don't let the Bigfoot bite. And have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.